Hello guys, you're welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you guys how to draft and cut a simple pencil dress. So if this is something you're interested in learning, keep on watching and let's get started. So first, we're going to be drawing a straight line at the top of the pattern paper here. So this is going to be our shoulder line, or you can call it the starting line as well. So I'll just label this the shoulder line. So from the shoulder line now, I'm going to measure down to my bust point. Now I'm going to draw a straight line across this point I marked. So I'm going to label this line as my bust point line. Now the next line I'm going to be drawing is from my shoulder to my waist. So from my shoulder to my waist for me is 15.5 inches. I marked it here and now I'm going to draw a straight line across this point I marked. So now I'm going to label this line as the waistline. Now the next line we are going to be having is our hip line. So from my shoulder to my hip line is 25 inches. I marked it here and I'm going to draw a straight line across this point I marked. Now I'm going to go ahead to label this line as my hip line. So now the last line we are going to be drawing is the M line, which is the end of the dress. From the shoulder here, I'm going to measure down to the length I want my dress to be, but you'll notice that a pattern paper is quite short. So the length of this pattern paper here is 35 inches, and if I should work with 35 inches, it simply means that it would be a mini dress for me because I'm tall. So the best thing we are going to do is just to increase the length of our dress when we are transferring the pattern to the actual fabric. Now let's just work with 35 inches for now. So I marked 35 inches there and then I'm going to draw a straight line across this point I marked. So this is the M line. This is the shoulder line, the bust point line, the waist line, the hip line, and the hem line. So now let's go ahead to take other measurements. So we are going to start taking our measurements from the center of this fold. On the shoulder line from the center of the fold, I'm going to go in to mark a neck width of 3 inches. For a plus size person, you should use 4 inches. So now for this dress, I would like us to make a V-neck line. Now from the shoulder here all the way down, I'm going to mark 8 inches. And then I would use my ruler to connect these 2 points with a straight line. Now from the center of the shoulder line, I'm going to mark half of my shoulder measurement. So my shoulder measurement divided by 2 is 7 inches. I marked it here. So from this shoulder point, we are going to come down by 1 inch to mark the shoulder slope. And then I'll connect this new point to meet the neck width with a straight line. So now the next thing we are going to be doing is for us to get our chest line so that we can be able to get our armhole depth. So how I normally do this is to divide my bust measurements by 6 and then I'll add 1.5 to whatever I get. For me it's 7.2. I marked it here and now I'm going to draw a straight line across this point I marked. So this new line is going to help get your armhole and it's called the chest line. Now from the shoulder slope I'm going to draw a straight line all the way down to meet the chest line. Now on this line, that's from the shoulder slope to the chest line, I'm going to place my tape and fold it into two in order to mark the midpoint. From this midpoint I marked, I'm going to go in by half of an inch. Now on the chest line, I'm going to place my bust measurement divided by 4 and I marked it here. So now I'll be connecting these 3 points to give me the armhole. So now I'm going to be using my pattern master to do this and I'll be using the inner curve on the pattern master to connect the 3 points together. So just make sure you arrange your curve properly so that you are able to connect the 3 points together like I've done here. So guys, the next thing we are going to be doing is to create our dart. And to do this, we are going to be dividing our nipple to nipple measurements by 2. And my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 is 3.5, and from the center I marked it on the bust point line first and then I went ahead to mark it on the waistline and I would also mark it on the hip line as well. Now I'm going to connect these 3 points I marked together with a straight line. So now the next thing we are going to do is that on the waistline, take note of that, on the waistline we're going to be taking our dart. So on both sides of the straight line, I'm going to go out to mark half of an inch. So depending on how big you are or your client, you can decide to take 3/4 of an inch or 1 inch for your dart intake. So now for the length of the dart, I would place my tape on the waistline to come down to about 4 inches. So from the bust point line here, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. And now we are going to connect all the points. So guys, this is the dart and we are done with it. Now we are going to be adding our body measurements. On the chest line, I've already marked my bust measurement divided by 4. Now on the bust point line, I would also be marking my bust measurement divided by 4. On the waistline, I would mark my waist measurement divided by 4. And because of this dart intake here, I'm going to be taking the distance between these 2 points. This is 1 inch. Now I would replace this 1 inch after I already marked my waist measurement. So once this is done, on the hip line, now I would mark my hip measurements divided by 4. So now on the hem line, what I normally do is to remove 1 inch from my hip measurements. So my hip measurement divided by 4 is 9.5 inches. Now I'm going to remove 1 inch from that and that will become 8.5 inches. So I marked the 8.5 inches on my hem line here. So now I'm going to be joining all the points together with my curve to give me the body shape. So from the chest all the way down to the waist to connect the waist to meet the hip. So I've noticed that most people usually use the straight side of the ruler to connect the hip to meet the hem line, but it usually doesn't come out nice. So it's best to just use the curved side of the ruler, but make sure that the curve isn't too pronounced. Now I'll go ahead to outline the hem line here so you can see the entire shape of this dress. So guys, this is basically all for the drafting out of the front pattern, as you can see. So just watch what I'm cutting out so that you don't make any mistakes. So let's go ahead to draft the back pattern. This is the shoulder line. This is the bust point line. This is the waist line. This is the hip line. And this is the hem line. So everything I did here was exactly the same thing we did for the front pattern. The only difference here is the zipper allowance. So now I'm going to start taking all my measurements from the zipper allowance line. Now on the shoulder line here, I'm going to go in by my neck width measurements, which is 3 inches. So I'm using 3 inches here because that was what I used for the front piece. So from the shoulder line here, I'm going to go in to mark the neck width of 3 inches. Now I want the neck at the back to be a round neck. So from the shoulder line, I'll go down to mark just 1 inch, which I'll then connect the 2 points together with my curve. So I'm going to be connecting these 2 points together to give me my curved neckline, and here you would notice that I'm extending this line into the zipper allowance area. So once this is done, on the shoulder line from the zipper allowance, take note of that, I'm going to be marking half of my shoulder measurements, and on this point I'll come down by 1 inch to mark my shoulder slope. Now I'll use a straight line to connect this shoulder slope to meet the neck width like I've done here. Now to get my chest line, I would place my tape from my shoulder slope to mark 7.2 inches. Remember we calculated that. Now I'm going to draw a straight line across this point I marked and I would label it as the chest line. The next thing I'll do is to connect the shoulder slope to meet the chest line with a straight line. Now I'll place my tape on this new line to mark the midpoint. So I'll do this by folding my tape measure into two and then I would mark the midpoint. So this is for the back pattern. There is no need for me to go in by half of an inch here because the back of our body is usually wider than the front of our body. On the chest line, I would mark my bust measurement divided by 4 and then I would connect these 3 points together. That's from the shoulder slope to the midpoint and then to my bust measurement on this chest line I marked. So once you have done this, the next thing you are going to work on is the dart for the back pattern. You know that when we drafted the front pattern, the dart started from the bust point line. But now for the back pattern, the dart would start from the chest line. So that's another difference between the front and the back pattern. Now on the chest line here from the zipper allowance, I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. On the bust point line, I would also mark my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. On the waistline, I would mark half of my nipple to nipple measurement as well. And on the hip line, I would also mark half of my nipple to nipple measurement. Now I'm going to connect all these points with a straight line, just like you see me doing. Now the next thing I'm going to do is that on the waistline, I'm going to mark half of an inch at the sides of the straight line. Now from the waistline here, I'm going to come down by 4 inches. I would mark it here. And from the chest line, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. Now I'm going to connect all the points together. Please pay attention to how I'm connecting all these points together so you don't make any mistake. So this is how my dart is looking like now. Now on the chest line, I've marked my bust measurement divided by 4. On the bust point line, I would also mark my bust measurement divided by 4. On the waistline, I would mark my waist measurement divided by 4. And because of the dart intake here, I'm going to take the measurement between these 2 points. This is 1 inch, and I would replace it here. Now on the hip line, I'm going to mark my hip measurement divided by 4. My hip measurement divided by 4 is 9.5 inches. So on the M line, I would subtract 1 inch from my hip measurement. So 9.5 inches minus 1 is 8.5. So I marked it here. So once you're done with that, we are going to connect all the points together with our curve. So now I'm going to be connecting from the chest line to the waistline. And then I would connect the waist to the hip. And lastly, I'm going to connect the hip to the hem. So take note of how I'm placing my pattern master. So basically you are done joining the points together. Now I'm going to go ahead to outline the M line so that it will be more visible. So while I'm outlining the M line, I'm going to extend the M line into the zipper allowance. Take note of that. So the last thing we are going to do on this pattern is that on the waistline, we are going to come out into the zipper allowance area. So once you have done this, from the center of your paper, you are going to go in by 3/4 of an inch. But if you have a very big butt, just go in by 1 inch. So I'm going to connect from this new point into the body of the dress. So the essence of doing this is for us to remove any form of bulginess that might want to appear after you fixed your zipper. So if you don't do this, you're going to find the center back of your dress folding when you fix your zipper. So this is a very important thing you need to do on the center back of the zipper allowance. So it's nothing serious. There's no special measurement to this. Just make sure that from the point you mark on your waist, you are going up and down like I've done here. So once you've done that, you are going to go ahead to cut out the back pattern now. So take note of the areas I'm cutting so that you don't make any mistake. So this is basically all for the drafting out of the back pattern. So let me bring the front pattern that we drafted earlier. I'll place this on the back pattern, and you will notice that the difference between the front and the back pattern is that the front pattern, the armhole is deeper than the back, and then the neckline we made is a V neckline for the front and a round neckline for the back, while there's a zipper allowance at the center back. And if I also place the pattern side by side, you'll notice that all the lines are literally aligned and in the same place. So the chest line area is the same, the bust line area is the same, the waist is the same, the hip is the same, and the M is the same as long as you use the same measurements. So guys, we've come to the end of this tutorial, and in our next tutorial, I'll be showing you guys how to transfer this pattern we just drafted now to the actual fabric. I hope this tutorial was helpful. You should give it a try, and if you're new to my channel, please subscribe.